I'd like to welcome you to this next video in the Workforce Opportunity for Rural Communities Round 6 TA Series presented by the Delta Regional Authority. This video will cover a deeper dive into the Statement of Need. I'm Nicole Dunn from Chamberlain Dunn LLC. We're a consulting firm based out of Indianapolis, and we've been working with DRA since round 5 of WORC, but we've been connected to the WORC initiative since its very beginning in 2019. The Delta Regional Authority was established in 2000 as a formal framework for joint federal-state collaboration to promote and encourage the economic development of the lower Mississippi River and Alabama Black Belt regions. DRA's region encompasses 252 counties and parishes in parts of Alabama, Arkansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, and Tennessee. These topical videos are presented on behalf of DRA to assist applicants with their WORC applications. There are 4 parts of the WORC application, all of which should align to form a complete package. They are the SF-424, the application for federal assistance, the project budget, the project narrative, and attachments to the project narrative. There is another video that gives an overview of each one of these, as well as additional videos that give even more detail on certain components and subsections. This video focuses on the first component of the project narrative, the Statement of Need. As a quick reminder, there are 4 separate sections that comprise the project narrative. The Statement of Need, which is our topic of interest here, but also project results that achieve the purpose of WORC, the project design, and the organizational capacity and experience for project success. The project narrative is the meat of the application. Format-wise, you have 20 double-spaced, single-sided, standard letter-size pages, 8.5 by 11, and you must use Times New Roman 12-point font and 1-inch margins. They want you to number your pages beginning with 1. Reviewers will not read anything outside of that 20-page limit, and note that the budget narrative does not count toward that limit. This is not a requirement, but you are strongly encouraged to label each section so that it aligns with the FOA and to directly discuss connections to each of the 3 focus areas that are outlined in the FOA. Use the FOA's words and the FOA's terms so that the reviewers are not guessing whether you have included each component and have aligned to each focus area. Don't make extra work for reviewers or assume they will make those logical leaps for you, because they most likely will not. The Statement of Need is described in the FOA as the foundation of the application because it lays out the case for why your project should be funded. It's a fifth of your points, 20 out of 100. It must lay out the case for why the project is necessary, why your project out of all the other applications across all 3 regions. And that case needs to be tied to the objectives of not only your project, but of the WORC initiative overall. Your Statement of Need has 3 parts. The project service area, challenges and opportunities, which is 8 points, the target population section, which is 6 points, and the description of workforce needs, which is 6 points. Your objectives in this section are to clearly explain the reasons for your proposed project, but also to demonstrate your understanding and alignment with each of the WORC focus areas, and to tee up the logic that underlies your project design and your project results. We have these needs, and therefore we propose these strategies that will meet these needs, and those strategies will make this amount and this type of progress. Before we get into those subsections, let's review what the WORC initiative is designed to achieve, since your Statement of Need should connect back to this purpose. So the purpose of the WORC initiative is to create economic mobility, address historic inequalities for marginalized communities of color, rural areas, and other underserved and underrepresented communities, and connect workers who live or work in the Appalachian, Delta, and Northern border regions to stable, high-quality, family-sustaining jobs, enabling them to remain and thrive in these communities. Unofficially, your Statement of Need should address these whys. Why these communities? Why these participants? Why these industries, occupations, and employers? Why these project-funded services or supports or purchases? You don't want to talk about your activities directly in this area, but you do want to use the Statement of Need to tee up that project design. So here you're making the case for need, the case for your selection of your target populations, the case for your workforce need, and then setting out that basis for your project design. Part 1 is worth 8 points and asks you to describe the area to be served and the identified challenges. Workforce, of course, but you can consider including other relevant challenges that prevent economic success. The FOA, for example, suggests you could include data on wages, on educational attainment, workforce demographics, or any other factor that you can demonstrate presents barriers to economic success. On page 21, you'll also see a link to the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, and it notes that you can use data from that tool to support your description of the community and its needs. Obviously, you have limited space, so be judicious and include only the most convincing things. The FOA also notes you are expected to provide sufficient details and citations to give reviewers confidence that your data comes from a verifiable source. You do not need to submit additional documentation. There's also no specific citation format. And in fact, if you do submit additional documentation, the FOA notes that reviewers will not look at other attachments beyond what's required and requested. In this subsection, you'll also identify the industry sector or sectors or occupations that you will focus on and why those were chosen. You'll also describe how those current or prospective jobs in those sectors or occupations measure against those 8 good jobs principles, which we'll cover in a moment, and how improved job quality will positively impact workers and employers. Choose the principle or principles from that list of 8 that are most logical and relevant to both your activities and to your statement of need. For example, if you're going to talk about organizational culture as one of your selected indicators for good jobs, you may want to consider discussing this in the barriers to lay the foundation for why your project should work toward this goal. And then you would probably want to include that in your expected results and in your section on achieving the purpose of work. And you would want to include activities that specifically work toward that. So when we talk about clarity and alignment, that's the kind of proposal writing strategy that will help reviewers follow you all the way from need to action to results. So what are those 8 good jobs principles? They are: first, recruitment and hiring. Qualified applicants are actively recruited, especially those from underserved communities. Applicants are free from discrimination, including unequal treatment or application of selection criteria that are unrelated to job performance. Applicants are evaluated with relevant skills-based requirements. Unnecessary educational credentials and experience requirements are minimized. The second is benefits. Full-time and part-time workers are provided family-sustaining benefits that promote economic security and mobility. These include health insurance, a retirement plan, workers' compensation benefits, work-family benefits like paid leave and caregiving supports, and other benefits that may arise from engagement with workers. Workers are empowered and encouraged to use these benefits. The next is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, or DEIA. All workers have equal opportunity. Workers are respected, empowered, and treated fairly. DEIA is a core value and practice norm in the workplace. Individuals from underserved communities do not face systemic barriers in the workplace. Underserved communities are persons adversely affected by persistent poverty, discrimination, or inequality, and this could include Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBTQ+ individuals, women, immigrants, veterans, military spouses, individuals with disabilities, individuals in rural communities, individuals without a college degree, individuals with or recovering from substance use disorder, and justice-involved individuals. The next is empowerment and representation. Workers can form and join unions. Workers can engage in protected, concerted activity without fear of retaliation. Workers contribute to decisions about their work, how it is performed, and organizational direction. The next is job security and working conditions. Workers have a safe, healthy, and accessible workplace built on input from workers and their representatives. Workers have job security without arbitrary or discriminatory discipline or dismissal. They have adequate hours and predictable schedules. The use of electronic monitoring, data, and algorithms is transparent, equitable, and carefully deployed with input from workers. Workers are free from harassment, discrimination, and retaliation at work. Workers are properly classified under applicable laws. Temporary or contract labor solutions are minimized. The next is organizational culture. All workers belong, are valued, contribute meaningfully to the organization, and are engaged and respected, especially by leadership. The next one, and this is very important for work, is pay. All workers are paid a stable and predictable living wage before overtime, tips, and commissions. Workers' pay is fair, transparent, and equitable. Workers' wages increase with increased skills and experience, And for the purpose of this WORC FOA, this is a $15 per hour target or more. The last is skills and career advancement. So workers have equitable opportunities and tools to progress to future jobs within their organizations or outside them. Workers have transparent promotion or advancement opportunities. Workers have access to quality, employer or labor management provided training and education. So you'll want to check out Appendix A in the FOA for more on these and on example strategies that might help advance these in communities. Next, in the statement of need, you must identify your target population, both the eligible population and the population you will prioritize, and this section is worth a total of 6 points. Once again, make sure this logically flows from the previous section where you talk about the community's needs. It should be clear why you selected this population or these populations. Why will serving these people move the needle on the identified need? There are 3 overarching categories of eligibility, so be sure to understand these definitions and know that whoever you identify here is whom you will be expected to serve. If you only identify new entrants as your target population, you will not be permitted to start serving dislocated workers unless you have a scope modification. And it may be the case that that modification request is denied. So be sure to choose your words carefully here and be intentional about the categories you list. That piece is worth 2 points. So the first eligible category is new entrants to the workforce. These are people who have never worked before or who have been out of the workforce for long enough to make it as if they are entering the workforce for the first time. So that could include, but is not necessarily limited to, long-term unemployed, formerly incarcerated or justice-involved individuals. You can also serve under this category youth who are enrolled in high school and are currently or will be eligible to be employed before or within 6 months after the end of the grant life cycle. Typically, that's been juniors and seniors in high school. You can also serve youth who have dropped out of school and are seeking their first full-time job under this new entrants category. The second category is dislocated workers. For the purpose of the FOA, that is individuals who were terminated or laid off or have received a notice of termination or layoff or were self-employed but are now unemployed. And the FOA also notes you can work with your workforce partners who frequently have to apply this definition to make sure that you understand it and you're serving eligible workers. And the last is incumbent workers. And for this FOA, that is individuals who are employed but need training to secure full-time employment or to advance in their careers or to retain their current occupations. This could include low-wage and medium-wage workers who need to upgrade their skills to retain employment or advance in their careers, or it could include workers who are currently working part-time. You are also asked in this section to identify and define the historically marginalized individuals or communities you will prioritize for service, and that is worth another 2 points itself. Note that there is not a requirement to exclude other eligible individuals from those you serve. So I've said this before, we've said it in multiple videos, but be sure you're choosing your words wisely. If you do truly intend to serve only the prioritized population who are eligible to be served, and that's fine, you're welcome to do that. But if you intend to serve the prioritized population and other eligible participants outside of that population, make sure you don't write yourself into a corner. So here you want to discuss who is your prioritized population, why were they chosen, how does it connect to other portions of your statement of need, and what are the specific inequalities or barriers that you aim to address, and how will your project enable those positive outcomes. Finally, you want to talk about how you're going to successfully recruit and retain and complete these individuals. You could use your organization's own history with the prioritized population, or you could think about how your partners or others will help you do that. And that section is also worth 2 points. The final piece of the statement of need is worth 6 points, and it's a description of the workforce needs, your current or expected needs of employers or industries in your sector of focus. And as with everything, make sure your case for that aligns with your proposed solution, your proposed activities. You'll talk about those activities later, but set up the logic in this section, and this is worth 2 points. Then you will use labor market information or other qualitative and quantitative sources to provide a comprehensive picture of the quality of the jobs in your identified sectors in relation to those relevant good jobs principles, and that is worth 4 points. This third subsection is again where I will mention, be sure you make it very clear you're including information about each of these 3 subsections through labels or other strategies. There are separate points for the project service area challenges and for the description of workforce needs, even though conceptually those two things could very easily overlap. So our advice is do not leave it to the reviewer to decide if you've addressed both subsections. Make it crystal clear that you have. As you're writing and framing your statement of need, here are some prompt questions to consider. What are the persistent and anticipated barriers in your service region that prevent sustained economic success? What are the indicators of good jobs that would show you are addressing those identified needs and are aligned with those focus areas? What challenges do your prioritized populations face that your project could address? What challenges do your employers or those industries face which your project could address? And what is the current state of job quality in those sectors? As I mentioned, and as the FOA asks, you want to back up your claims with the right amount of data, and that data can come from a lot of different places. There's a link on page 5 and again on page 21 of the FOA to that climate and economic justice screening tool I mentioned, which is a suggested source for these data. So that's a good place to start. A few other places you can go, even if you're not a data person, are listed here. These are just ideas, not necessarily recommendations, but you could consider looking at local and state plans, at state labor exchanges, at partner annual reports and other data reports. Community needs assessments often include things like this. You could go to statsamerica.org, to data.census.gov, or Census Reporter, which aggregates census data. You could look at your county health rankings, Bureau of Labor Statistics data. You can even collect employer testimonials. That can count as qualitative data, especially from those partner employers. Or you can use other public or widely recognized proprietary sources. I mentioned this earlier, but again, the FOA notes there is no specified format for citations. You need to include enough detail that a prudent reviewer could reasonably know where your data came from and that you used a reputable source to find that data. A few final notes on competitiveness. In addition to the soapbox I'm always on about using headers to mirror the project narrative sections and subsections, we also recommend you review your statement of need with 4 things in mind. First is to prioritize your data. If anything is redundant or extraneous or just not that compelling, eliminate it. And the second is to be as specific and tailored as you reasonably can be. I know when you're writing a grant, time is at a premium, and labor market research, in addition to things you might already have, is a luxury. But as far as possible, use regional or county or local data and speak to the focus of your grant application, to the specific industries and occupations that you are saying represent the greatest need and greatest opportunity, and if possible, specifically to those target populations you plan to serve. And on that note, remember that a statement of need doesn't just have to be bleak. It doesn't have to paint the most dire picture necessarily. It can also, and should often also, be about opportunity and about hope and about how, yes, we have these needs and here's the case for doing something about it, but here's the opportunity our project represents, the negative consequences that can be avoided if our project is funded. Remember that you don't necessarily have to do new research for this application, but you do want to find compelling and ideally that location-specific data to strengthen your case. And finally, this seems obvious, but a good application has logical alignment. You'll see in the project design section that you are repeatedly asked to tie the design back to your statement of need, so the need and design sections of the narrative should fit together like puzzle pieces. You don't have to necessarily create a logic model. The FOA does not ask for one, so you would use that as a tool. I know that can take time. But sketching out even a rudimentary one that you use internally to connect the need with the goals, with the activities, with the resources and the results for each of those 3 focus areas will show a level of thoroughness and planning and preparation that also will help imply organizational capacity and will make you a stronger applicant. Just a few final reminders. We have an entire video series through the Delta Regional Authority at the URL you see here. Start your UEI, SAM.gov, and grants.gov registration processes now if you haven't already. And you can submit any technical questions to the email address you see here, dol-eta-dwg@dol.gov. Reference this FOA and be sure to include a contact name and number. Note there are a lot of questions DOL can't or won't answer, so you can also submit questions to us. My email address is going to be on the next slide, and we will do what we can to point you in the right direction and answer anything we are able to. And of course, your application is due by Thursday, June 20th, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Eastern Time, submitted only in electronic format through grants.gov. That's it for me. I'm Nicole Dunn. You can reach me at nd@chamberlindunn.com. Note that the end of Chamberlain is LIN. There's no A in the end there. And I would be glad to answer any questions that I can. Best of luck on your application.